We are going to talk about the authority that you have with your children. It's written about in Corinthians about how if the two of you are in agreement together, how your children are holy. If you're not in agreement, what happens is that pulling apart gives Satan a leeway to get in there. You see, when God says that your children are holy when the two of you are in agreement of Christ, that means not a demon in hell can touch them. That's really what that means, because that means they're set apart and they are holy. I have been asked, what authority do you have? Well, that's your child. That child came out of your belly. You have more authority than anybody in the world. You have more power over that life than anybody, anywhere, anytime. I don't care who they are. Your child, when they grow up, they have a free moral agency of choice. And that is something that you cannot override. You can protect them. You can pray for them. You could be the mother that you need to be. You can do a lot of things. But if they make bad and wrong choices, then your prayers will count to help them out of it. But they are free moral agents. They have a life just like you have. And they have consequences to the things that they do also. But if you raise them the way God tells you to raise them, bring up a child in the way it will go, it should go, then when he is old, he will not depart from it. Because you got to understand, once the truth, which is Jesus Christ, is deeply planted into a child, it never comes out. Oh, I mean, the devil can come and show you all kinds of things that they can do this and they can do that, and but it just don't go. And I'll tell you why. Because when Jesus is invited into the heart, he comes and he tells you plainly, I will never leave you nor forsake you. I will be with you always, even unto the end of the world. So if the child, turns their back on God, does that mean God is no longer there? No, it means he's even more so there. He's staying real close so that he could bring them back, because he is going to strive to the last breath that he is going to bring them back. In the meantime, he says, bend the reed while you can, that when it is young, it's a reed, it's not a tree. You can bend it in the direction that you want it to go. That's why it's very important for you to be that mother or that father that will lead them to Jesus Christ. And how do you lead them to Jesus Christ? By example, by living the life before them. That means more to them than anything. And that means you're not a corrector all the time. You make time and you make efforts with God to know how to love them. You can bring the best out of a child or the worst. You could bring the best out of an animal or the worst. You can bring the best out of anybody or anything or the worst. It all depends on your obedience to what God is all about. If love comes first and not your reputation as a Christian, you will always be working for nobody to ever find out what you go through with your children, for nobody to ever find out that they're human beings. Really, that's what it is. They're humans. They're not robots. They are human beings. And like I had said in other videos, when they grow up, they're going to read you the riot act. If you have done them wrong, they're going to tell you in no uncertain terms what you did wrong with them, because they aren't foolish, they aren't stupid, they are children, and they will remember. They will remember what hurt them, how you failed them, what you did to fail them. And when they, some of you, they will reject you for it. Well, maybe you always harped on me because, and all you cared about is what the neighbors thought and what the church thought. You never cared about how I thought and felt. These kinds of things will be brought up to you. You never did this, you never did that, you always did this, you always did that. And if you don't have that kind of conversation with your child, you can never work it out so that you can be close to them. They will always fester their perception of who you are and what you did. In your perception, you believe with all your heart you did the best you knew how to do. And doing the best you know how to do is not necessarily the best thing. You must bend to the place of love that you give them a little bit of leeway to understand you're not perfect. Nobody is. You are not the perfect mother. I don't care how you pray. I don't care what you did. You are not perfect. And you are capable of making mistakes. So if your child comes to you and tells you about the mistake that you made, take heed. Listen to them. Listen to them. And instead of saying, well, I know I never intended that. I know I never did that. That is the wrong pew. What you must do, and I know I went through it. My daughter separated from me, didn't want any parts of me, thought she knew and understood everything I was going to say, everything I was going to do, because she had a misconception and an understanding of who I was. So when she came to me and told me what she thought and felt, it was very painful to hear. Now, this happened probably 20, 30 years ago, but because she was still probably a teenager or just coming out of being a teenager. But the thing is if I would not have paid attention and not listened to her, she would have never come back to me. I would have never been there when she was passing away. I would have never been able to help her. I would have never been able to do anything. I would have been responsible for that great divide, because what you think you are as a Christian and what you think you are doing is not always the way it's supposed to be. So when she began to tell me what she really thought of me and how she felt and how bad it hurt, I began to cry in absolute sorrow. Sorry that I wasn't more a better mother, that I didn't see. I was blind to her side of it. All I was seeing was my side of it, my side of being the best mother I could be. So we both wound up bawling, but it was a good cry, because what it did is it brought us so close together from that day on that we were like this. You couldn't separate us, because that was the moment she understood I truly loved her, because I was willing to back up and say, you know what, Lord, she might be right. Maybe I did do it this way. Maybe I didn't understand that. Instead of saying, oh no, I did the best I knew how to do, and there is just no way you are ever going to convince me any different, and you are the one that's wrong. Well, what did you exceed? What did you succeed at? Separating you? Did you succeed in proving to them that you loved them? Did you succeed in helping them? Did you succeed in anything other than being right, knowing that you were the best mother? When you have a lot to tell yourself that you did right, you also have a lot to tell yourself you better back up a little bit, because you're not as perfect as you think you are. Listen to what I'm telling you, because these are facts, absolutely true, the way the human and the spirit work with children. A lot of parents took their stand, and this is the way things are. This is the way they're going to be. A lot of parents forget that the child is growing up and they are no longer a baby. They are no longer children. They are adults now, and they need to be treated like an adult. they need to understand that you need to back up a little bit and let them be who they are, not what you think they ought to be. And they're going to make mistakes. Oh my goodness, they're human, just like you made many mistakes, unless you really believe you're perfect. And if you believe that, there's something wrong with you, because it's not true. I can guarantee you that when they talk to you and they tell you what they think you're doing and what you've done, if you don't take heed to that and take it before God and say, Lord, did I do this? Was this really me? What was it caused me to do this? This is what all my teaching does, is get people to look inside of themselves, to get people to clean that out. Because if you don't back out, you're going to lose your kid forever. You can lose your kid forever, your child. You can. I have had many parents that made some really foolish mistakes with their children, and they'd go for 20 years, their children as adults would want nothing to do with them. And I had put it in other videos, what I would do and what I did. Humble, humility, love. Love and humility is a great power to win your child back, because you were strategically placed in their life. And if you can't win them in love, something is wrong with you, not them. Believe me, not them. It's you. It's you that doesn't want to bend. It's you that is positive. You've done everything right. Well, I prayed about this and I prayed about that and I pray over them for this. And I just know in the sight of God, I've done everything within my power. Well, so did I, but it didn't help me any whenever I was faced with what she thought and felt of me. It was a painful thing to go through. But boy, did it bring fruits of love like you have never seen. And she got to a place where she just, a few weeks ago, maybe it was a month ago, she told me, she says, Mom, of all the things that I ever had a concern about, the one thing I never concerned myself about is this: knowing that you love me. I know that beyond anything, that you love me. And that's exactly how I felt about my mother, because my mother, being mentally ill, never able to be a real mother to me, being beaten, abused, and everything, never been able to sit down and teach me anything. I knew with all my heart, I didn't have to ever concern myself. I knew my mother loved me. It's something that it's inside of them. And she felt that, and she felt the need to tell me. But when they are blind to what they're going through, they're blinded by pain, blinded by memories, even if they misunderstand their memories. Those memories are important to them. And if you don't back up and let them have those memories, they can never come to the place of the truth. Never. Because you're there and you do this. You blind them. You're in the way of God speaking to them. I know my daughter came to me and told me when she read my book, she said, Mother, you are a true believer, which is very rare. She says, if you're looking for somebody to help you, you're not going to find it, because you are very rare. This is my daughter, okay? She lived with me for how many years? And she also said to me, now, Mother, I watched you all of my life, and I watched people hurt you unbelievably. I watched you in so much pain and so much anger, anguish, not anger, anguish. She said, and then all I could see is it never changed you. You remained exactly the same. You always were above all of that. You always loved them. You were always good to people, no matter what they did to you. She says, now you tell me, Mother, How can I disrespect that? I can't. That was her testimony about me. Okay, that's what she thought. That's what she saw. So, what I'm saying to you is this: we have extraordinary power over our children to protect them, but we don't have extraordinary power to control them. If you are a controlling mother, you are not using the power of God. You are using a type of witchcraft, because any control is a form of witchcraft. Any intimidation, any kind of control, those things, any manipulation, those things are control. And you're using the principles of God, and you're using the power of God to say, oh no, I'm not doing that. Oh no, I haven't taken over their life. You don't have the right. Listen to what I'm telling you. You do not have the right to take over an adult life, whether it's your child or whether it's anything. You have no right. Because once you put forth your hand on that person, they can no longer see. All they see is you. They can no longer find God, because you've blinded their eyes with you. Because, well, what they look at is they see, even husbands, like I was just saying in the last video, what they see is, well, you're so perfect, I can't be like that. So what the child sees is, there's no use in talking to her, because she's never going to listen. She is positive she is right, even though she's hurt me a lot. You can't be like that. Not with your children. You cannot be. And your children are a teaching ground for you to learn how to be with other people. Because in the home, separated from everybody else, if you don't get that victory and understanding, you're never going to have help and understanding with other people. You're going to be positive that you are able to put your hand on other people and manipulate them and do whatever you want to in their lives. That is never been God. That is not God. That is what witches do. That is, the Holy Spirit don't work that way, and I'll tell you why. The Lord wants people to follow them because they love Him. He doesn't want them to follow Him because He controls them and He forces them. God will never force a single man, a single woman, or a child to follow Him and love Him. Never do it. So this is why many times I preach and teach to men. What makes you think God will force your wife to love you and submit to you? He won't. What makes you think that when He commanded them to submit to one another, what makes you think that God is going to force them to obey you? He won't. It is up to you as a man to get them to want to love you and want to obey you. And if you fail at that, you're failing yourself. And why? Because you're a tyrant, you're a dictator, and you're somebody, I'm a man, I'm better than her, and she has nothing without me. Oh, does she feel that? Oh, does she feel that? Because you make her absolutely nothing. You make choices of whatever you do because you are king. God told you you're a king. Well, what is she? Chopped liver? What is she? Nothing? If you haven't made her your queen, you're doing yourself a wrong. You are missing out on the best marriage you could possibly have. If you force her into submission to that which is unnatural, you are sinning against God, and you are trying to manipulate her mind to believe it's right when she knows. A lot of these women know this is wrong. A lot of them feel it. They feel degraded. They feel all kinds of things. Well, you can do exactly the same thing to your child. You can force them into submission when they are young enough, but when they hit a certain age of adulthood, you've got to go like this and let God have it. Because if you don't, they will only see you. And God doesn't want that. He wants them to only see Him. And if you've been more of a dictator, a manipulator, a person in control, I doubt if they ever saw God in you. And I doubt if they can ever relate to God in you, because you are that much of a power instead of being a mother. You see, just recently, my pastor's wife, who is a pastor, said something to me. She said, "Now, Marion, when you go to visit your daughter, you've got to take off your preacher's hat and put on your mother's hat." And she was absolutely right. I mean, this is what I probably would have done and was doing, but she brought it into being. She really, really helped me, because I had to go there and be a mother. Far beyond anything, I had to be her mother. And that was more important to her than anything, was being her mother. So understand, you're not perfect. You need to go before God and ask God. I don't care how you've prayed. I don't care how many things you think you've done right. You've got to go ask God and say, "Lord, when they get older, if they don't listen to me, am I on the wrong path? How can I change this? What can I do to help them?" Because that's love. That's love more for them than it is for you and what you think you are. You have to give up the flesh. Like I said, God told me something, that as a mother, when she became an adult, I had more power and authority to protect her than anybody on this earth. Anybody, I don't care who it was, because she was in my belly. And I had more power and authority to help her make heaven than anybody else, because that was given to me when she came out of me. So yes, you have all power and authority over your child, more than their boss, more than their husbands, more than anybody else. He has some power. Oh yeah, because he's her husband and he's her covering. But he is not the one who can feel everything about her, because he never carried her in his belly. There are things about being a mother, and this is what God has always shown me. God will always, always, always hear the prayer of a mother. Always. God has, Jesus Christ has such a respect for a mother that you couldn't even believe it. He even tells you about, he has respect for widows that don't have anybody. Once their husband is gone, I've seen people who were even disobedient to the Lord, and they were still striving to be obedient, but they were disobedient. And the moment their husband went in the grave, God took over taking care of them. And you could see it everywhere they went. You could see God's hand on everything. Why? Because she was a widow. And God loves widows. God treats them differently. God treats a mother differently. And God treats a father differently, because we are all different. So when you ask me questions such as how much authority you really have, if you take the credit off of your child who is an adult that has a free moral agency, and you take the credit, well, she's only got that because I prayed for her. No. There is the thinking that's really wrong, because she only has that because God loves her, because God spoke to her, because God helped her, not because you prayed. This is, people who are spiritual lift themselves up so high. I told about the woman that come to my house, and she would say, "Well, she only has that because I prayed." And I said, no, she has that because God called her to it and God helped her. Well, everybody knows that I'm the only one that prays and only one that understands. And my sister, she sat for 20 years in the church and she never got saved. And I said to her, "But I met your sister and I could see Christ in her." And she looked at me shocked. My sister don't. She's not saved. She doesn't do what I do. So what? She don't have to. She's not to be like you. But she always convinced her sister that she had nothing and that God would never hear her because she's the only one who had God. Well, this is what some mothers do. Some mothers and some fathers. The only reason why they have anything is because of me. If I didn't give them and I didn't do for them, they would have nothing. No, they only have something because God saw to it that He did something for them. You sit in God's place when you are actually sitting where Satan wants you. I don't know if this message is enjoyable or if this message will enlighten you. I hope and pray it does, because I hope you see things as they are, not as you want them to be. I hope you get on your knees and you cry out to God for you to see the truth, because it's the truth that'll set you free. It's the truth that will enable your children to love you the way they need to. Not love you because you're just so much in the Lord, because you just have control over everything. Please take heed to what I'm telling you. Humility. Humble your heart before God, because if you do not come to God as a little child needing Him, oh my goodness, He says you can't even see the kingdom of heaven. If you are using God to say you are perfect and you know it all and you know how to do it all, something is wrong. Now, you could say, well, you do that. No, I don't. I tell you daily, I'm nothing. He's everything. Don't come to me. Go to Him. Now, if I was arrogant, I would be sitting here saying, well, I'm the only one that knows and understands. I don't do that. I give you sharing what God did. I didn't share what I did. Of course, so some of it is connected because, like I said with the last video, and I talked about how God led me to love on my husband when I could have been very rotten to him. But what good would that have done me?